This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, welcome to episode 158 of A Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda, and today's sponsor is Splashtop. Now, I've talked a lot about Splashtop, and I've been using them for 7 years personally and 3 years through our company, and I love Splashtop. Right now, video producers, game developers, TV station broadcasters, architects, designers are all using Splashtop to work from home remotely. So if you have those high-end, several thousand, $10,000 computers that are doing your rendering and your animation and your video editing, you leave those at the shop. You can take a laptop home, remote into those, and get 4K streaming, really high frame rates, and be able to work with great performance remotely, securely from your home. And it's a fantastic solution. So that enables you to edit videos, 3D modeling, develop games, and you can do really cool applications. You can use Adobe Acrobat, Premiere, Photoshop, apps like Rivet, Unity, Unreal, AutoCAD. All can be accessed remotely using Splashtop while your machine's back at the office doing the heavy lifting. Great tool, highly recommend it. I've been using Splashtop for a long time, and you can get a discount and a free trial by going to ageekleader.com/Splashtop. All right, Geek Leaders, today on the show, I've got John Ferris. He's the CEO at inVision Edge. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, John.
So hopefully you are doing well and healthy up there in Canada. I know there's a lot going on with coronavirus down here and pretty much everywhere in the world, and we're on lockdown, and I imagine you guys are probably in the same boat.
We sure are, just trying to figure this out together, and we're going through it day by day. But at the end of the day, we'll get through this stronger. But we got to work through it together at the end of the day.
Yeah, and hopefully we don't have any bandwidth issues. I know where I'm at right now, there's a huge influx of people trying to work from home, and we have a smaller ISP that services us, so it might be some issues, but hopefully it all irons out and people will understand.
You got it. We'll make it work.
All right. If you don't mind telling the audience just a little bit about kind of your career path or kind of how you got to where you are today, and just to lay some context for our conversation going forward.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, John. So been in the business world for about 27 years or so. So I started out actually my career in human resources, HR management. Started out kind of the front lines doing recruiting, selection, health and safety, the whole gamut of HR. And then moved into a leadership position as I kind of escalated in my career. I was kind of really good at doing what I was doing, so thankfully had a shot at working in leadership. And the organizations I worked with are pretty large organizations, 1,000 people plus organizations. So basically, I was thrown into leadership from the frontline positions and learned a lot about myself in that. And I wasn't given a lot of guidance or a lot of training, but learned how to wade through some of those leadership skills that helped build a team, help build credibility, help build focus, and that sort of thing. So through the course of my career, I've really moved into more leadership as I moved into other organizations. And I migrated actually my leadership from initially HR side of things into leading operations. I led operations in a large manufacturing company. I also led sales and marketing and customer service. So I applied some of those characteristics, those leadership characteristics throughout my career, whether I was wearing a sales hat or an HR hat or an operations hat. So I learned a ton about myself. And through the course of working, again, in 25, 27 years in large organizations, I picked up some skills and some methodologies and processes that I wanted to take out on my own. And about 7 years ago, started my own consulting company, and inVision Edge is the name of our company, and applied those characteristics that I found successful in these companies, applied it with our clients. So I developed some systems and processes that I could teach people how to focus on primarily growth within their organizations. And in the course of kind of learning and applying these characteristics, found out there's really three overall fundamental kind of pillars of success. And number one is a strategy, having a really clear strategy of who you are, what you're focusing on, what your uniqueness is, and how you're going to execute that strategy. And the second kind of pillar is innovation, focusing on what new things can we work on that kind of pull us ahead from the competitors and that we do differently. And last but not least, and the glue that holds it together is really the leadership characteristics. As leaders, we need to focus on what's important and why is it important, and then turn it over to our talented teams to figure out the how-to. So if you have that kind of magic cocktail of strategy, innovation, and leadership, that really allows our organizations to grow. So as I moved into the consulting world, I started the company by myself and on my own. And over the last 7 years, we've grown it to a team of about 7 people now, and we have some other contractors that help us out. But we're applying those characteristics of strategy, innovation, and leadership to companies now across Canada and some in the U.S. So that's been the journey of moving from the front lines into leading within larger organizations, and now leading within a smaller organization and company that I started myself. So it's been a wild ride, and I have to say I learn every day.
So this formula of strategy, innovation, and leadership obviously works for a large company or even a small company that's starting out on the corporate level. What about for like a small team or a team within a company? For example, maybe I'm a manager of a web development group or a mobile app development team, and I only have a small team of say 6 or 8 people. Would I be able to implement this strategy, innovation, leadership, these 3 pillars within just my team?
Absolutely. In fact, that's where I started the concept, was when I was leading smaller teams. But if you're leading a small team, at the end of the day, it comes down to strategy. Okay, as a team, what's our purpose? What are we here for? Like, what are really our key priorities, our why, our reason to believe, and what are the key elements we need to focus on to provide value to the company that we're working within? So it starts with strategy, and what are the very specific tasks we're going to do to execute, et cetera. So number 1 is strategy. And then for any service provider in an organization, we need to do things in new and unique ways. It's not about just doing the same thing over and over and over again. At the end of the day, our job is to solve problems for our internal customers. So that requires innovation. What's the real problem that we're solving for our internal customer? How are we going to do it in a different way and not just do it the same old way? So that's under the innovation bucket. And as you're leading a small team, our job is to motivate our teams. It's not just about getting in and doing all the work. And that's actually often the hardest transition, is instead of just doing and problem solving, our job is to support the doers and the problem solvers to make sure that the right environment is there. So we have to wear the hat of a leader to provide the right guidance, the right coaching, the right mentoring, the right crucial conversations to course correct, et cetera. So the characteristics of strategy, innovation, and leadership is appropriate no matter what size of team or no matter what size of organization that we're leading.
And which one of those 3 is typically the hardest that you see? And I know you mentioned that being able to motivate your team and not just getting there and doing the work yourself. And I know for me that was the hardest. Does that seem like the hardest for most people that you talk to?
It is. The hardest is the leadership side. It's because it's a mindset and almost a psychological shift. Because as employees and team members, when we're working in our area of expertise, we often focus on problem solving, and we focus on just doing good work and get recognized for problem solving and doing that great work. And we associate our success with doing those tasks and doing those things to help people. But when we move into leadership, we're actually not doing the immediate work, the immediate problem solving. Our job is to support teams in doing that. So we have to actually get out of the way and let our teams do that work and provide the environment and the coaching and the guidance. So it's a psychological mindset. And those leaders that make that mindset shift more quickly are the ones that are most successful, because you can really frustrate a team quickly. If you're, you give a team direction and you go in and start doing the work for them, then they're going to really get mixed messages and say, well, hey, if you're going to do the work, then I'll just let you do it and I'll do something else. So having that mindset change is the most difficult thing for sure that I see when organizations are looking at that balance between strategy, innovation, and leadership.
Yeah, I know. Like for me, when I first became a manager, I was that guy that did that gave direction and then said, "No, you're not doing it right, or you're not doing it fast enough. Let me jump in there." And what I found is that people then spent their time finding other jobs instead of actually doing the work.
Well, and the key thing you need to think through is that your teams won't do it exactly the same way you will. They might do it better though. And the key is to keep communicating and define the swim lanes or the sandbox that you want your teams to play in, and let them play in that sandbox. The moment we start getting in and messing around that sandbox, then we're demotivating our teams. We're disengaging our teams because they're not feeling that they have the confidence or that the support to get the work done.
Mm-hmm. So going through a situation like we are today where, people are out of work or their work has shifted dramatically from being in the office to remote, all because of things that are going on in the environment, how important is it to have a good strategy in place for something like this? I don't know whether it's disaster recovery, whether it's, just being agile and mobile and to I don't know, be able to shift perspectives and understand priorities and things like that.
Well, that's a great question. We're living and breathing that right now with the coronavirus challenges that we're dealing with. So, the areas of strategy, innovation, leadership are still actually even more important in these times. The challenge really is a time horizon. So when we're looking at strategy, often we look out months and years. Time horizon of weeks and weeks now, or days and weeks. So when we're looking at strategy, at the end of the day, it's about, okay, what's our purpose? What are we going to focus on? What are the most immediate things we need to get done this week, this month? Who's going to do what by when? So strategy in these times are even more critical, but it's really the time horizon has shifted from, again, months to years to days and weeks. But we need to have a really clear plan, a really clear strategy of what we're doing for recovery planning, contingency planning, how we're going to work from home, how we're going to communicate with our customers and provide value to our customers during these days. It's just a matter of the time horizon is really, really tight now in strategy. Same with innovation. Instead of looking at big projects of digital transformation or innovation, we're looking at new ways to solve today's problems. So a lot of the work we're doing right now is on innovative problem solving on more immediate things of contingency planning, of working remotely, working virtually, how you're going to carry on with business. And leadership, in times of crisis or challenge, that's when leaders need to step up and communicate, focus on what the most important priorities are. Team first, focus on obsessing on getting close to your customers, and then the follow through and the ongoing cycles of communication, I find are even more critical today as we're dealing with this challenge throughout the world.
Yeah, for sure. I think that having the communication from the top down in times like this is really, really important, because, if you don't hear from, your leader about what's going on or what needs to happen in a timely fashion, then it leads to fear. It leads to people going really fast in wrong directions or in opposite directions sometimes, which it is obviously counterproductive.
Well, exactly. And in the absence of information, people will make up in their minds the worst possible scenario. So you may not need to, you don't need, and we don't have all the answers today, but we need to communicate the best we can with what information we know today, and do it all the time. Just keep communicating. The key is to keep doing that. And in the absence of that, as I say, we our minds jump to places that aren't typically very positive. So that's why we need to share what information we know and make it two-way. It's not just leaders communicating to their teams. They need to ask questions, talk about the fears, talk about the challenges that are in people's minds. And again, you might not have all the solutions, but at least listening and being aware and doing what you can to communicate the best you can is it's really the best we can do right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that kind of hits all three of those, where you're talking about having, a good strategy in place. But even if you didn't, now you can become innovative and figure out solutions to those problems so that you have a strategy for next time or for going forward. And then having that good leadership and that communication coming from the top down, and also, leading from the side to side. This is where people need to step up and become a leader of their peers and lead to the right and to the left, and not just for up and down.
Exactly. And it's times like these where there's emerging leaders, right? People who might be in an operational role or, hands-on role, where we're going to lean on them to lead maybe smaller teams or lead projects or lead cross-functional initiatives where you're working with other departments or other teams to make things happen. So it's really the time for leadership to step up, and you'll find natural leaders in organizations, and then the leaders who actually are in leadership positions. It's time for them to step up too, and just double down on the focus on clearly defining what's important, communicating, pivoting, and adjusting, and supporting their teams.
Yeah, so you and I are both optimistic guys. Let's say we make it through this pretty quickly or relatively quickly, and we all go back to a somewhat normal existence, obviously with more hand washing than we had before, I think, in different areas, and more social distancing than we had in the past. But now our company's back to where we were before. and we've never really implemented strategies or innovation, or our leadership has been maybe not the best in times. We just trying to get stuff done. We've been running a department and just getting things done, and now we want to be more intentional about having a good strategy and communicating that strategy and having it documented. What are our first steps, and what do we do to put that in place?
Oh, that's a great question, John. Thanks. Because at the end of the day, when you look at the challenge we're currently in, we can't control what's happening outside the walls of our organization, but we can control what's happening inside the walls. And when you focus on strategy, innovation, and leadership, that really creates internal capacity and it creates that internal agility and ability to respond to the changes no matter what's happening. So while we're working on kind of immediate strategy, innovation, leadership right now to get through these current times, setting it up so that as we start moving through this and coming through it, setting up a really clear strategy to talk about how we're going to serve our customers, run our organization, et cetera, in the midterm and longer term is going to be really key so that our employees and our teams and our customers are really in the same page with what we're doing. The same goes with innovation. As we're looking at bigger innovation as we're coming out of this, I don't know if the world will actually return to the way it was before fully. For example, using technology and virtual meetings and virtual communications, even travel, I think there'll be some fundamental differences. So we need to innovate as organizations. If that's the reality that people are going to communicate in different ways now, then we need to put in processes, systems, just ways to run our business that are different than they were before. And that's where the innovation side comes in. So creating the capacity now and capability now is really key so that as we move forward with it, then we can move beyond that. And leadership, again, the leadership horizon will change from the immediate focus on contingency, what are we going to do in the short term, to the longer term. Because as we come out of it, there's going to be a lot more opportunities, I believe, to operate our companies differently, to serve different markets, serve different clients, serve people in different ways. And as soon as we get through the immediate challenges we're in, focusing on those key opportunities to make our businesses stronger, I think is going to be the key focus of leadership. And setting up that capacity long term through strategy, innovation, leadership is what the leadership attention will need to focus on.
So when it comes to leadership, we mentioned communication as kind of being one of those really key pillars of just leadership, being sure that you communicate often and frequently and transparently. Even if you don't know all the details, you still try to communicate as frequently as you can. What are some other things that leaders need to be doing to have that good leadership within their departments?
So number one is the listening and the communication skills, always communicating. But at the heart of what we do as leaders, first thing is to articulate kind of the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Whether it's department or whether it's a company, the number one job is to make that compelling reason to believe. And Simon Sinek's book, Starts With Why, is a great example of a tool that can help you through that. But whether you lead a small team, a mid-sized team, or a department or an organization, number one job of a leadership is to really articulate that why, which is kind of an emotional response to why you're doing what you're doing and what the value is you're creating for an organization. So once you do that as a leader, our job is to say, okay, well, that's a purpose, get people on board with that, and then defining the roles and the accountabilities and responsibilities within the team to realize that why. So that's where the strategy piece comes in, determining what are the biggest things we need to focus on as a team to help achieve that why, that helps support the organization. So articulating that and getting people involved in creating those steps and the strategy to help achieve that is really that key step. Then after you do that, once you articulate the why and the strategy, then it comes down to accountabilities. What rhythm of accountability will you put in place within your team to pull up from the day-to-day firefighting to focus on the strategy, to focus on the biggest opportunities to improve what you're doing within your department or within your organization? So building in a rhythm of accountability within your team, it's kind of the next key step. And within that is actually the ability to have crucial conversations because, most people do great jobs. There are times when you need to course correct. So as a leader, we need to be able to step in and have those crucial conversations with the team or individuals within the team to course correct, saying, hey, listen, maybe we should have done this or could have done a better job in this area. Let's work to improve. So the ability to have that crucial conversation is really key. And then basically it's a feedback loop. Always review the strategy, always review what the priorities are, pivot and adjust based on what your customers are looking for, whether you're internal customers or external customers. So those would be the key characteristics. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that communication side of what we're doing, what's really important for us to focus on, and how do we hold ourselves accountable to make sure that we're following through with those commitments.
So that's one of the things I've seen with a lot of new leaders in the past is that they have issues when it comes to accountability. Sometimes, you're a new leader, you don't feel like you can hold people accountable, or you feel awkward having those crucial conversations that you talk about. So what are some tips that you have for someone that may be a new leader? Maybe they even got promoted and they were a peer to these folks, and now they're managing them, and they have to hold people accountable and have those crucial conversations. How does one do that?
For sure. So, step one is owning that you are a leader now. So you've got to kind of erase the fact that you were, a really good, frontline producer or focusing on what you did to get where you are. But now you are a leader, and your number one job as a leader is, again, to set the direction. This is what we're doing. Hold people accountable to make sure people are doing what they're doing. So that's, again, that psychological mind shift is really step one. So you got to kind of step back and look at yourself and realize that is your key job. And then I always say done is better than perfect. It won't be perfect the first time you do this. So having the courage to step in and have a crucial conversation with a team member that's going off course, you're just going to have to learn some of that through experience and try it out, and you'll learn from it. And it won't be perfect the first time, but you'll get better and better every time you do it. Now, and there are resources out there, like actually talking about crucial conversations. There's a good book called Crucial Conversations that kind of walks you through how you have those conversations. So, you could self-study, you could do some research on how to have those conversations. But at the end of the day, it's about experience, owning that you are a leader, getting in there, and as long as you're doing what you think is right for the organization, for your team, then you won't be off base, and learn from it. And people, you might get some, especially new leaders, you might get some challenges within the team. Somebody who might have thought, hey, I should have had that job. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you got to own it. You're the leader, and that's your job. And if you need to course correct those individuals, have those open, honest conversations, and work through getting them on board. But setting the stage early is really key. That's the other thing. Sometimes leaders will kind of hang back, saying, "Well, I'm going to kind of feel this out a little bit." The key is to assert yourself right away as a leader, and that doesn't mean like pounding your fist on the table, that sort of thing. But hey, you are the leader. Meeting with the team and talking about the direction, talking about the priorities, putting your own stamp on the leadership of your own department and your team is going to be really key. It's also very helpful to meet with team members individually, to sit down and talk about their expectations. What are their aspirations? What are they positive about, or what are their challenges? So developing that rapport, not as a colleague or a peer, but as a leader, is really key. And start highlighting your expectations as you're meeting with those individuals as well, of what you expect of them and what you're going to do to support them as you lead the team forward.
So how important would one-on-ones be for something like this?
Yeah, they're really key. So, the team dynamic is a whole of the team. So you have to communicate and get people engaged, et cetera, as a team. But having those individual relationships is really key. You have to form that relationship individually with your team members, again, from the perspective, not as a peer, as a leader. So that's really key. And Patrick Lencioni actually has kind of the best team model out there. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is an awesome book if you haven't read it. But he talks about the tenets of teamwork, of people working together. Number one is trust. And to develop a trusting relationship, you have to get to know the person and establish kind of a rapport. So having those individual meetings, that's how you often establish trust. And then once you establish trust, then you can enter into conflict, because you can't have healthy conflict unless you have a foundation of trust, because otherwise it gets personal or what have you. So working through the relationship individually, and then focusing on conflict, healthy conflict. And once you can focus on having a healthy conflict, engaging in healthy conflict, then you can move into areas like accountability, holding individuals accountable within the team, holding the team accountable if they miss targets, et cetera. But it starts with that foundation of the relationship of between the leader and the team. And asserting that early is really, really positive. And I would say, actually, speaking of the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, if you're a new leader, running a 5 Dysfunctions of a Team workshop, there's actually self-guides and stuff with your team, is a really good way to set the course of a new leader in a team.
I'll definitely have to check that out. I know you mentioned conflict in there, and I was reading Todd Henry's book, Herding Tigers, a while back. And in that, he talks about how he was, I guess, doing consulting for a group, and they said, "Oh, our team's great. We never have conflict." He goes, "Well, then if you never have conflict, your team's not great. Your team's in trouble."
You can't make progress unless there's healthy conflict. I often say if everybody's agreeing to everything, then you have a lot of cost saving opportunities.
Yeah, because nothing's getting done.
Nothing's getting done. And, to move, talk about strategy, innovation, and leadership. If there's not healthy conflict, then you're not moving things forward. You're stuck in the same old. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't have innovation without any kind of conflict.
You got it.
Yeah. So let's move into that. Let's move into innovation. What are some ways that teams can encourage innovation? I know, like right now, when you're in a crisis such as what we're at right now, a lot of managers are kind of taking the reins off and saying, "Hey, just get the job done, figure it out." What are some ways that maybe when we're not in a crisis mode that we can also still give people that the ability to encourage innovation?
Sure, and some of the steps apply whether it's in crisis or immediate times or longer term. But the first thing we always have to do when we're looking at innovation is defining the real problem we're trying to solve. It's not just kind of a free-for-all. Our leader's job is to determine what's that real problem that we need to solve here with the innovation. So that's always step one. What's the problem? Step two is when we're looking at coming up with new ideas, don't just have a few people together, get a broader group perspective together. When you collaborate together, that's when you get really more unique ideas. And often people try to come up with an idea themselves, and it's very inefficient doing that. You need to bring a team together and collaborate together. So bringing people together and running through new ways to look at the problem is really key. And then once you come up with some new ideas, rapidly test them. Like test out the idea or test out the assertion for the idea very quickly. Like you don't have to launch the full idea right away, but test out a piece of it or get feedback and then learn from it and get smarter in these rapid cycles of learning. Because a lot of people try to launch the full thing without even doing some rapid tests, but you can test things out very quickly and then you iterate from there. You really change it as you learn from it and get better.
Yeah, that's where we come into like the minimal viable product idea.
MVP.
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah. So start with what's the real problem we're solving, get groups of people together to come up with new and unique ideas, test the idea very quickly. Get in front of a customer, get in front of an internal customer, test it out with a team, and then learn from there. So those would be some of the high level characteristics of focusing on innovation.
Awesome. So I think we've kind of hit strategy, innovation, and leadership. What other advice do you have for a new leader or leader of a department that may be going through something like this for the first time that can encourage them and maybe help motivate them to go forward?
Well, I guess the key thing would be trusting in yourself. I mean, you've gotten to where you are for a reason, so just trust in who you are and you look at your own style. That's the other thing. We all have our own unique styles, and just kind of own that style. Don't try to be somebody who you're not. People will see through that. So just be authentic, be who you are, and focus on just doing what's right for your company, for your team, and for your organization. Learning is big. Like don't be shy to listen to podcasts. Obviously, there's a lot of awesome material out there that you can access, whether it's podcasts or books or what have you. There's just a ton of resource out there as leaders, and I've been at it a long time myself as a leader, and I'm learning all the time. And I guess the last piece of advice is to roll up your sleeves and get in there. And again, as long as you're doing things for what you believe there is the right reason, you won't be wrong. And you'll learn as you experience things. So getting in and just trying it and learning it rapidly is really kind of the key thing. But again, be who you are. Don't try to be someone that you're not. And if you're authentic and just doing the right things for the right reasons, then that will shine through and you'll be successful. But again, it's an ongoing journey. It's not like you reach kind of, I'm the ultimate leader now. In fact, people who say they're the ultimate leader are probably not leaders. So that there's a certain amount of humility that's needed for that. And there's a balance between being hungry, like you need to push the boundaries, you need to push your teams, but you also need to be humble. Hey, I don't know all the answers. Let's work together to find out the answers. And then there's element of kind of an emotional intelligence, right? Knowing where your strengths and weaknesses are as a leader. For example, I'm reasonably strong at setting a vision and a destination. I'm really suck at the details. So making sure you have people in there that can fill in some of those gaps. So having the emotional intelligence to know what you're good at and what you're not is really key for a leader.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it right there. And I always like to say that leadership is a process, not a project. It's one of those things that's never going to be ended. It's the destination is a mirage. You just got to keep going.
You got it. Exactly right.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, especially with that be authentic. I think that's one of the things that people a trap they fall into when they're early on in the leadership is they want to think that, show that they know all the answers and they have everything right. But sometimes it's better just to be honest and say, hey, I don't know. I'm trying to learn this together. Let's work on this together. That builds the trust that shows you your authentic self.
Bang on. That's exactly it.
Man, I think this has been a great conversation. How can people find out more about you and your team and the things that you guys are working on and maybe connect with you?
Yeah, thanks, John. So you can connect with me directly at John Ferris at inVision Edge, INVISION Edge, EDGE.com. Email me. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn, John Ferris. You can also check out our website, inVisionEdge.com. You can see who we are, what our team's all about, what we do. And last but not least, we do have a complimentary product for your listeners here that if you want to check it out, there's some tools and that sort of thing that they can focus on for strategy. And to access that, they can go to our website, which is invisionedge.com/geek, GEEK, and you can get some cool tools to help you on your strategy, innovation, and leadership journey.
All right, awesome. I'm going to link that up in the show notes so people can find that at geekleader.com as well. And I'll link up to your LinkedIn, the website, and the special offer that you have for our audience. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure people will take great advantage of that. John, thanks so much for coming on the show. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll get through this together.
You too, my friend. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hope you guys enjoyed that episode with John Ferris, and if so, please share it on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or wherever you share things. And don't forget to visit our website at geekleader.com for show notes, and there's a list of all the books from the authors that have been on the show, so lots of great things there, plus links to all of our sponsors and affiliates. And you can definitely check out more of our sponsors by going to geekleader.com/splashtop, who is the sponsor for this episode, and learn more about their products that include remote access, so you can access your machines remotely at super high quality and high frame rates. I've been using the product for a long time. Highly recommend them. Cannot recommend them enough, and I can't thank them enough for sponsoring this episode. So again, check that out at geekleader.com/splashtop.